4,200 screens that Snow White had in its second weekend, a huge portion of those IMAX screens, because Disney still has the contract for them. Working Man, Chosen, did not. Snow White already has about a 15 to 20% per ticket average dollar amount advantage over every other movie on this list, and it still performed at that level. When we talk about real butts and seats, the butts and seats just ain't there. Renegade Online. And here we are with Snow White, and I want to remind folks that this is the IP. This put Walt Disney on the map. It put Walt Disney on the map in 1937. This should have been a layup for Disney. And as I said today, when you look at the performance of this box office and you consider its production budget, this is really, really bad. I mean, an $87 million opening weekend globally that is now stretched to 143, an entire 7 extra days. And this movie still has not gone to a 2X over its opening day. We're done here, folks. We are done. This movie is likely going to finish up somewhere in the range of around, I would say, 200 to 250 million. And I know it's a wide range.
Under three?
Under three. Under three. Because it's gone, Ron. Let me show you what I talked about earlier today. This movie comparison. And I pulled films from Disney that are in recent years, number one, and that also have some relevance to the release schedule of this one. Little Mermaid in 2023, Dumbo 2019, Captain America Brave New World just from a month ago, The Marvels in 2023, which was a Thanksgiving release, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania 2023. Here's the deal. Everything on this screen was a flop for Disney. Every one of them. Disney lost money on these. No question. Let's go down to the particulars. If we look at where Snow White is right now in the domestic box office, $66 million on its second Sunday. Little Mermaid, which lost Disney about $150 million by its second Sunday, was at $187 million. That's a big difference. Dumbo, which lost Disney money a good bit, was at $76 million on its second Sunday. Captain America Brave New World, which is going to lose Disney somewhere around $200 million. $141 million on its second Sunday. $167 million for Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Right here. That movie lost Disney somewhere around $200 million from as best we can tell. The only movie that Disney's Snow White has managed to defeat to this point, day for day, is The Marvels, which is regarded as one of the biggest financial flops and failures, not only in Disney history, but in cinematic history, by $2 million. So this is where we are. There's not a whole lot to really push forward here. I'm flabbergasted at this point. And not only that, but Snow White is so bad this weekend, okay, all the comparisons aside, if we go back here and we look at the home screen, Snow White, that's just the Sunday. If we go here to the weekend chart, this thing got blown out by about $1 million by a random Jason Statham, the 30th Jason Statham action movie from Amazon MGM. What I want audiences out there to really comprehend on this one is that the whole issue with the Working Man movie, or Working Man with starring Jason Statham, this is a film that basically Amazon built for Amazon Prime. They own MGM Studios. They shot this movie to be an Amazon Prime video, much like Netflix would do a film to be a Netflix video. The difference is Amazon Prime is very lightly testing the waters with theatrical releases, either prior to or in tandem with concurrent Amazon Prime releases. So this is a movie essentially that really did not have much of a marketing budget slapped behind it. Okay? But in the second weekend of a $300 to $400 million deal, it beat it. This is how bad Snow White's drop-off is at this point estimated to be 66%. It's likely going to probably be even slightly worse because when we see these...
And you don't think they've already begun the process of pulling the rug on marketing expenses on Snow White? Knowing...
Oh, I think they have. Yeah, I think they have.
They started doing that a week ago Thursday.
Yes, but
when the movie actually opened and they dropped a bunch of posters on Thursday with Stitch instead of Snow White on their X account. And I'm like, well, that's odd. You have a movie opening up today, yet you're promoting your next movie. What's this all about? So like, yeah, and you're not wrong about this. This shouldn't have beat Snow White because this movie was going to make this much amount of money no matter what. I mean, yes, this has a little bit more going for it than the typical Statham film. It's produced by Sylvester Stallone, co-written by him and David Ayer, who's the director Statham and him just made The Beekeeper. So there's, and it's based on Chuck Dixon's book. So it has a lot going into this, and it is a book series, right? And it was basically pitched the idea that this was going to be a series of films. So yeah, I mean, and you're right. Like the budget, I haven't seen a budget on this, but if it was anything close to much more or less than what Beekeeper was, I'd be surprised, because Beekeeper was what, 40 million, and this isn't as flashy as, and this isn't even as flashy as that.
But I think you're right. I mean, look, here's the thing: when Disney creates a theatrical release, Disney has built this film from the ground up to be a theatrical release. Yes, it's going to go to Disney Plus, but the difference is with movies that, for example, that Apple TV contract, and we've talked about this many times. Things like Ridley Scott's Napoleon, or things like Martin Scorsese's Apple movie DiCaprio. Oh, shoot. I just forgot the name of it. But I mean, these are films that Disney spent Apple spent roughly $200 million on. But it didn't cost that much to film these things, even though they put them into theaters. And the theatrical revenue did not compensate for the cost that Apple spent to do them. Apple didn't put them into theaters necessarily to be financial victories. They put them in there to boost people going over to Apple TV to watch them. Amazon is testing the waters with kind of the same thing. They're making movies with big names in them. They're leveraging some of the assets they've bought, but they haven't really dived into making giant theatrical marketing pushes yet. They're really think of this as a Netflix film that was intended to be a Netflix film, but they gave it a theatrical release for marketing reasons. But they're not spending $50, $100, $150 million to actually promote this film and make it a big hit in theaters. They're just trying to recover costs.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of a glorified advertisement for for when it goes on Amazon Prime. You're not wrong, but also the movie being as cheap as it is, it made this much money at the box office. This is kind of like The Beekeeper in a sense that I think it's going to do very well, in that it will make money, because I think The Beekeeper was their highest grossing film to date at the box office, and yeah, I mean, they're gearing up. You got to remember, the Bond thing is going to be a big deal. Bezos has been putting it out there that he wants to compete on a cinematic level. That's why they bought MGM, so they actually had a studio label they could slap on these movies. And when you go to see them, you're like, oh, it's MGM. Like, okay, you know that logo, the lion roaring, So that's what they want. And Bond is going to be a big deal for them. That is going to be the first thing I think they'll put out there, and they'll actually put a full press media blitz for, because MG is the company that's actually doing the distribution on this, so I think it's another arm of MGM if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not sure. I mean, this is a big win for everybody involved with Working Man, and especially how bad it's making Disney look, right? Like, that's the thing. And The Chosen was another one, because The Chosen also had pulled ahead for a bit there. For those who don't know what that is, that's Angel Studios' Jesus TV series that is just hugely popular. And what they basically did was take 3 episodes, and they're showing them as a movie in select theaters and as a Fathom event. And that Fathom event was outgrossing Snow White. Friday, the
Yep.
Princess Mononoke Fathom event was outgrossing
Yep.
Snow White. Like, Snow White is doing so bad.
Yeah.
It's making Captain America Brave New World look good in comparison.
Tom, to your point, which you're totally correct on, if you look at what we've got up on screen while we still have this up, I want you to look at Disney's Snow White. Again, a $400 million production venture by Disney. $3,381 per theater. Look at that third column from the right, okay? $3,381 per theater. Look at The Chosen right behind it, $5,142 per theater, because it was only in about half as many screens as Snow White. A Working Man, almost 1,000 fewer screens than Snow White, $46.65 per theater. You really start putting this together and you start understanding. Now, let me make it worse, is that those 4,200 screens that Snow White had in its second weekend, by the way, a huge portion of those were premium large format screens, IMAX screens, because Disney still has the contract for them this weekend. Working Man, Chosen, did not. Did not. So Snow White already has about a 15 to 20% per ticket average dollar amount advantage over every other movie on this list, and it still performed at that level. If we did a quick adjustment on this and pulled out about 20% for PLF just to do tit for tat with these other screens, okay, Working Man and Chosen, Disney's Snow White without the PLFs probably would have been closer to around $2,700 to $2,800 per theater average this weekend without the IMAX and PLFs. That's how bad this is.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.